much. Good morning, afternoon, wherever you're in the world. Hello, everyone. Hope you've been having a great couple of days filled with a lot of interesting and insightful information. I'm really honored I get to be here with you today. And before we get started, I have a very important question. Who here has been a child before? I'm going to assume all of us. Fantastic. Yes, we were all children once, and then poof, suddenly we're adults with jobs, responsibilities, and bills to pay. And yet, regardless of your background, you all chose to become a parent. And I want to start by saying how much I deeply respect all of you for being here, working hard to be the best version of yourself and showing up every day for the children in your life. And I want to acknowledge, y'all, our job as parents is hard. Our job, in my opinion, is one of the most important jobs in the world, and sadly, one of the least valued. Our children bring things out of us that we never saw coming. Emotions, reactions, triggers, and the children are at the receiving end of all of it. So let me ask, does anyone here wish they could respond to their children with more connection and less reactivity? If you're here, I'm going to guess yes. Me too. And that's how I ended up doing this work, helping parents and teachers, because we all need help. And my hope today is to expand how you think about yourself, how you see the children, and understand the messages you are sending them without realizing it. So it feels more meaningful and more aligned with the kind of leader you want to be. Okay, a little housekeeping. Please have a pen and paper handy or your notes app on your laptop, as I'll be offering some questions along the way for you to reflect internally. I'll also share some stories, and please keep in mind, I'll be giving examples about younger children, but what I'm sharing applies to any age you're navigating. And lastly, we'll drop into the body for a few somatic exercises. If those feel like too much, please feel free to opt out. Okay, now a little bit about me. My name is Noah, and I'm the founder of Rewriting Childhood. I help parents and teachers understand what is happening inside of them when children trigger us, so we can find more peace in the hard moments. I'm a mother of 2 little ones, navigating all the same earthquakes as many of you. And I'll tell you something. I was convinced that after having a background in psychology, a master's in leadership and change, and having read 100 books about children and parenting, I was going to know exactly how to parent my children. And then I became a parent. And it wasn't until then that I realized I didn't know how to put into practice all the things I had learned in my studies. So I decided to go back to school and became a certified parent coach. And it was there when I learned something that changed my life forever. I learned that the way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. And the way we respond to their behaviors forms the story of who they are. Think about how you were spoken to repeatedly by your caregivers growing up. Over time, their voice became your inner voice and slowly began to form your belief system of who you are. These are some of the inner voices that may have been programmed for us. Or these. Now, take a moment. Which one did you identify with more? The positive self-talk or the negative? There's no right answer. Just notice from a place of reflection, not self-judgment. Okay, we're going to do our first exercise. And for this, we're going to go inward and reflect. So take your time with this. And if it feels like too much and you need to opt out, just do what feels most comfortable for you. For a moment, I'd love for you to close your eyes and think about that child that you once were. Once you connect with that child, I want you to try to think about a caregiver whom you didn't feel the most comfortable being around. How did they talk to you? What was their tone of voice, their gestures, facial expressions? How are you feeling right now in your body when you think about that person? Are your shoulders tense? A tight chest? Are you holding your breath? And now I'd love for you to think of a caregiver that you looked up to, that you felt safe to be around and you learned from. How does it feel in your body to think about that person? Okay, now please take a deep breath. Maybe put your hand on your heart and open your eyes. That caregiver that you felt good to be around, that was a leader in your life. And now you get to be a leader in your kids' lives. And I know that some days it might feel like no one is listening. You repeat yourself over and over, and still the same behaviors show up. You wonder, am I really making a difference? Is anything I'm saying or doing landing at all? But your influence goes far beyond immediate compliance. Your power is in the everyday interaction. Without even noticing, you are shaping how your child sees themselves, how they handle challenges, and what they come to believe is possible about relationships and about who they are. The question is, with how much awareness are you doing it? And yes, of course, we're going to have hard moments. That's what life and relationships are about. But it's about having many more positive experiences than negative ones. I think of it like the 70-30 rule. If 70% of our interactions feel safe and connecting, the occasional tough moment won't define the relationship. It becomes just a moment, not the whole story. Okay, so in order to make sense of this journey, I want to provide a little behind the scenes on brain development. I hope not to bore you. If you're already familiar with this, great. We're going to quickly review the basics to help explain why this approach matters so much. For simplicity, I'm going to focus on 3 key parts of the brain: the lobe brain in green, the middle brain in yellow, and the frontal lobe in blue. The first part of the brain to develop, from birth to around 2 to 3, controls basic survival. Breathing, crying, sucking, swallowing. The child is constantly seeking safety and taking in their environment like a sponge. Children have something called mirror neurons. You know when you stick your tongue out at an infant and they imitate you? That's thanks to mirror neurons. They're watching us, y'all. And during this stage, children have no control over their emotions and impulses. Every time they scream, whine, cry, kick, hit, or bite, that's their impulsive brain. They literally can't control it. And they're 100% dependent on co-regulation from an adult to calm their bodies. The second part to develop is the middle brain, from around age 3 onwards. This is the part responsible for emotions and survival instincts of fight, flight, freeze. During this stage, children are learning to feel, to identify their emotions, and to contain them. But the reactions are still very intense and impulsive. And please keep in mind that this part of the brain doesn't fully mature until 12. Children continue to need emotional co-regulation from an adult until this stage has developed. And lastly, from around age 4 onwards, if the brain has integrated a safe environment from the early years, the prefrontal cortex begins to develop. This is the part responsible for logic, problem solving, impulse control. And this part of the brain is not fully developed until the late 20s. So when we expect young children to act like adults in terms of self-regulation and impulse control, we're asking them to use a part of the brain that hasn't even started developing yet. And it may sound counterintuitive, but the best way to help them become those empowered adults is not by expecting them to act like adults, but by meeting them now in their childhood, so their brains can fully develop by the time they get there. And you may be thinking, but my kids are 3 or 4 and do as they're told and control their impulses. And to that, I'd ask, might they be doing it to please you or to not upset you at the cost of their own needs? And I get it. I was raised in an environment where they tended to use fear-based strategies, such as timeouts, removal of belongings, threats, and shame. Has anyone else had caregivers who sent you to your room and used threats or even corporal punishment to get you to comply? In the short term, many of these approaches may seem as if they're working, but I would ask, at what cost? How we show up can either harm the connection and the relationship we're trying to build with them in the long term, or strengthen it. This is something I am personally and actively trying to unlearn. These kids will be adults like you one day. And when they are asked to remember a caregiver in their life, as I asked you earlier, I want you to ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered? I'm going to give you a few seconds. Maybe you can write a couple of words or the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay. So we've covered the brain science piece. That's the why. Now let's look at the how. Have you ever wondered how a child comes to believe they're worthy, capable, or lovable? Spoiler alert, it starts by looking at ourselves first. So I'm going to share with you 3 pillars that you can use as a framework for your day-to-day interactions with the children. First, we're going to look inward and pay attention to how we are showing up. Second, we're going to notice what lens we are using to look at the children. Do you see them for their behavior, or are you able to see underneath it? And once you're able to see yourself and to see them, we can then look at how we can help the children see themselves and help them create those internal voices of worthiness and resilience. So let's start with the first pillar. For this, we're going to hold up a mirror and pay close attention to how we show up for the children. Because here's the thing. The child is watching how you show up for yourself and how you show up for them. They're watching your face when you're angry. They're watching your shoulders. They're listening to your voice and your tone. And they're noticing when what you say doesn't match what you show. And from all of that, they're writing a story. A story about whether the world is safe, whether they are safe, and a story about who they are. As Eli Harwood teaches, children are a we before they are a me. So the tool we use is self-awareness. And I'm going to walk you through 3 places where this can show up in our daily lives. First, are you aware of how you talk to yourself in front of the children? Let's imagine you make a mistake in front of a child and you start to deprecate yourself. I'm so stupid, I'll never learn, what is wrong with me? What do you think they're learning when they watch you do that? They're learning, this is how we talk to ourselves when we make a mistake. Second, are you aware of what your body does when children make mistakes? Let me give you an example from my own home. My children spill things a lot. They're little. And I really want to teach them that spilling is part of learning, part of figuring out how to hold a cup, how to pour, how to carry things. It's not a big deal. But here's what happens. Before I even open my mouth, my body clenches, my jaw tightens, and this tone comes out of me that I didn't choose. And I can see their face drop. And in that moment, my mouth is saying, it's okay, it's just water. But my face, my body, my voice are saying something else. And they're absorbing all of it, the words and the tone. And guess which one they believe? And lastly, are you aware of how your body is feeling when a child is having a hard time? I noticed this with my daughter. When she began having the usual 2-year-old meltdowns, I thought I was doing everything right. I was applying all the scripts I was learning, and yet it seemed that all I was doing was pushing her further and further away. I couldn't understand. Until one day, I was talking to my parent coach. I could not live without her. And it dawned me. My words were saying one thing, but my body was doing another. I was telling her things like, you're safe, I'm here, breathe. But guess what? I wasn't feeling safe. I wasn't truly present, and I wasn't breathing. Have you been there too? It wasn't until then that I learned what I really needed to do, which was to find safety within myself so I could provide safety for her. So I stopped trying to fix the situation. I stopped trying to make it stop. And our energy during her hard moments began to shift. I went from trying to talk her out of her emotions to just sitting next to her without saying anything and focusing on my breathing, my safety. Because here's what I realized. When I was trying to stop her feelings, her little body was learning, something is wrong with me. My feelings are too much. Mama can't handle me. But when I was able to stay steady next to her, what she absorbed was different. Mama's safe, so I must be safe too. And that's the real work here. It doesn't matter the amount of scripts we've learned or how much we've learned about what we need to do or say in challenging moments. Information does not equal transformation. If we don't truly believe deep down everything we've learned about children and their development, our bodies will show it, even if we say the right words out loud. So for practice, next time you make a mistake in front of your child, pay attention. Pay attention to how you talk to yourself, to what your body does, and how your body feels. And then rehearse. How would I like to show up next time? Okay, let's move on to the second pillar, which is how we see the children. What beliefs or assumptions might you have learned about how children should or shouldn't behave? Where did those ideas come from? A teacher, a parent, society? And are those ideas helping you understand the child and their needs behind their behaviors or getting in the way? So they're knocking things over, screaming, whining, hitting, kicking, or biting, all the things kids do as they grow. And the tool we're going to use here is curiosity. I'd love for you to take a moment. When you think about behavior, what are some things that come to mind? What do you think behavior is? Maybe you can write it down. Una de la Hook, a child-focused psychologist and neuroscientist, wrote a book called Beyond Behaviors, and she explains it this way. Behavior is communication of met or unmet needs. Children do not choose behavior. They're not choosing to behave badly or give you a difficult time. They're having a difficult time. They're just being in the world with no filter. Some have just been here for barely 1,000 days. I love what the author of How to Talk to Children So They Will Listen said. When kids don't feel right, they can't behave right. Let me share a real life story from my home. My daughter Ella is now 4 and my son Ethan 22 months. But 2 years ago, we learned that Ella has a highly sensitive auditory system. Loud noises completely dysregulate her. But at the time, we didn't understand that yet. Ethan, as a baby, had colic and cried constantly. Twice during those overwhelming moments, Ella bit him. The second time, I found her biting his arm while he was crying in his crib. I was horrified. I screamed at her, telling her to leave the room, and then I cried, holding my baby, completely confused and heartbroken. That night, I kept thinking, what is wrong with her? Are we raising a monster? And it was my husband, the one I teach all these things to, who gently reminded me, there's nothing wrong with her. She's 2. She needed our help and we weren't close enough to help her. Dr. Becky, a psychologist and parent coach, says, the problem is not the urge to bite or hit. The problem is the lack of space between the urge and the action. In other words, we change behaviors not by changing the urge, but by helping the child insert more time between what they feel and what they do. And suddenly everything became clear for me. It's not their fault. But guess what? It's not our fault either. There's a whole world underneath the behaviors that show up on the surface. A world of feelings, of needs, of bodies asking for help in the only way they know how in that moment. And it's our job as the grown-ups to be the pause between their feeling and their action until they can find that pause themselves. Or have you never met 40-year-olds who have slammed doors or said something they regret? Because we're all human. And that's why I want to invite compassion for both. The child who can't stop themselves and the caregiver who can't get there in time. And what I've learned is that most of the time, underneath the behavior, there are 3 core needs children are trying to meet. Connection, to feel loved, safe, emotionally held. Autonomy, to feel a sense of power and control. And play. They're exploring trial and error. It's biology trying to make sense of the world around them and themselves. And it's true, many times this shows up in a way that's an inconvenience for us and our needs. We are tired. We all have needs and they all matter. The question is, how can we meet both our needs and theirs? So here's the practice. Next time you see a hard behavior, pause and get curious. What might they be needing right now? Connection, autonomy, play? What are they trying to tell me? Okay, let's move into our final pillar, the one that pulls everything together. We've looked at how we see ourselves, we looked at how we see the children, and now we're going to look at how we help them see themselves. Not for their behavior, not for their hitting or the biting or the meltdown, but as to who they truly are underneath all of that. And the way we do that is by modeling empathy. Because empathy is what tells a child, I see you, all of you, not just what you did. And for this, I want to ask a challenging question. Not from a place of judgment, but from a place of growth. Are we modeling empathy? Or are we modeling something else? Because remember what we talked about earlier, they're always watching. Mirror neurons. In the psychology world, empathy is defined as understanding someone from their perspective, not ours. How many times did I confuse empathy for saying things like, oh, that happened to me too, or even worse, or it's okay, that person or place wasn't worth it anyway, or don't feel bad or sad, stop feeling how you're feeling, let me fix it for you and feel happy. But a few years back, I heard a definition that really spoke to my heart. And that was the ability to communicate that healing message of you're not alone. So if empathy is communicating that message, I want us to think, what messages are we communicating to our children when they show us hard behaviors? Take a moment. What's your first instinct when you see a child hurt another? Think about it, feel it. There's no right answer. Just let it be honest within you. Maybe it's to rush to protect the child who got hurt. Maybe it's to say, that's not okay, go check on them, say sorry. Or maybe it's to look at the child who did the hurting with frustration or confusion. What I notice that comes up for me in those moments is not, you're not alone. What rises in me is blame and shame. Harsh words want to come out of my mouth. Labels, disconnection. And that's not because I'm a bad parent. It's because something old is rising in me. What we've learned. Thankfully, I'm learning not to let it take over about 70% of the time. And what many of us have learned to do is to summarize those harsh reactions into what we think is a gentle, go check on them, harmless, right? But if we direct the kid who's doing the physical hurting to go check on the kid who was hurt, I wonder, who is checking on the emotional state of the kid who did the hurting? That's where we think we're teaching empathy, but what we're actually saying is, you're on your own, go fix it. I'm not coming with you. Gabor Mate puts it this way, children don't get traumatized because they get hurt. They get traumatized because they're alone in the hurt. And being alone in the hurt, that's what becomes shame-inducing. Brené Brown, an expert researcher on shame, explains how shame means I am bad versus guilt. I did something bad. Guilt is a feeling towards something we've done, and we can change it with the help of the adults around us, our leaders. But shame becomes our identity. And that's much heavier to carry because shame doesn't just hurt, it isolates. And here's what's important for us to understand as the grown-ups. The more shame we put on them, the more challenging behaviors we create, because shame doesn't teach, it just repeats. The child who feels I am bad will act out from that story again and again. We end up creating the very thing we're trying to stop. So how can we guide the children who are having a hard time and showing challenging behaviors to not make that their identity, their sense of self? Before I go into strategies for that, I'd love to guide you through one last exercise. As before, please listen to your body. If this is too much, feel free to opt out. I want us to explore what it would feel like for you if you were in the children's shoes. I'm going to role play a scenario with 2 different responses. After each one, pause and notice how it lands in your body. Don't filter, don't analyze, just notice. Okay, so maybe close your eyes and imagine what this would look like. It's the end of a really hard day. Nothing big, just everything, 100 small things. You didn't get to eat lunch, you got bad news from your boss, you've been holding it together for hours. And then you walk in the door, back home, and your partner or your parent says something, just one little thing, and you snap back. Something sharp, meaner than you meant it. It's out of your mouth before you can stop it. And someone walks in, sees the interaction, and immediately says, "Hey, it's not okay to talk like that. Go check on them and see if they're okay and say sorry." I want you to think about how hearing that feels. When you're in the heat of this moment and somebody swoops in and immediately redirects you to consider the other person. What thoughts or emotions come up? What sensations? Now, same scenario, same long day, same snap at your partner, and someone walks in and says, "Wow, it sounds like you had a really tough day. It seems like you're really drained right now. That must be so hard." Notice your body. What is it like to receive that kind of response when you've just exploded at someone you care about? What stories and internal voices are coming up now about who you are? Okay, let's come back to the present now. And here's the thing. When someone sees underneath our behavior and meets us with empathy, they meet the child inside us, the one who needed to be held. And when we're met that way, our body learns something, that we're worthy, capable, and lovable. That is the inner voice empathy creates. And I'd love to just pause here and ask, if you could go back to one of those moments where a child hurt another child, do you have any ideas of how you would, would you do differently? Maybe it's a change on how you respond. Maybe it's a shift on what you say, a softer tone. Okay, I'm going to end this last pillar by giving you 3 tools to practice for these exact moments. The first one is called redo. I use this almost every day in my home. When my son, who's almost 2, hits us, instead of saying, "Don't hit," I might kneel down and say, "Oh, let's try that differently." And then I model for him what I want him to do. Something like gentle, softly, and then he repeats it after me. Because the hitting is not who he is. It's a nervous system asking for help. My job isn't to correct him, it's to model for him what success looks like. No long explanation, no lecture, just a redo. But I can only do that if I feel safe in my own body. The second one is becoming the translator. Children don't always have the language to tell us what they need. Sometimes they use words that sound like attacks. My daughter said to me the other day, "You're not being nice to me." My first instinct was defensiveness. I wanted to snap back. But when I translated, what she was really saying was, "I'm scared of your tone. I need you to feel softer. I need you to come back to me." And sometimes they don't use words at all. Sometimes it comes through their body. A child who hits isn't telling you, "I'm bad." They're telling you, "Something is too big inside me, and I don't know what to do with it." Our job is to see that, to kneel down and say, "Hey, I saw something big just happen inside you. I'm here." That's the translation. And from that place, once they feel seen, we move to the last tool, which is we're on their team. You're not their enemy, waiting for them to mess up. You're their guide, their leader. So instead of go check on them, try modeling for them what it looks like. Or invite them, let's go check on them together. Because when you say that, you're telling that child 3 things without saying any of them. You're not alone. What you did doesn't make you bad. And I will show you how to make this right. That is the difference between a child who builds a story of shame and a child who builds a story of, "I made a mistake and someone helped me through it. I am still loved." That's the inner voice we want to give them. I think it can all be summed up in one picture, right? A boss will tell you what to do, and a leader will show you. There's a quote by Maya Angelou that I love. She said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, will forget what you did, but will never forget how you made them feel." And with that, I invite you one more time to ask yourself, what kind of leader will these children remember me as? How do I make them feel? And I want to make sure I say this. None of this comes from a place of shame. I am a parent and I mess up all the time. Trust me. The point isn't perfection. The point is awareness. And if you're sitting here thinking, "But how do I actually do this in the hard moments?" That's where I come in to help. So stay with me. I'm about to share some ways you can connect with me. So as we close, if you take anything away from today, let it be this. How can you see yourself? How can you see the child? And how can you help the child see themselves? Because a child who feels seen by you learns they're worthy. A child whose behavior is understood, not punished, learns they're capable. And a child who is met with empathy in their worst moments learns they're lovable. You have power. The power to shape a child's sense of self and the inner voice they will carry. Thank you. And here's how I can help you. I offer one-on-one coaching where we look at what's happening for you in your child's hard moments so you can begin to shift how you show up. And I also have a community for mothers called The Village, because for me, the biggest epidemic in the world of parenting, ironically enough, is loneliness. We weren't supposed to do this alone. It truly takes a village. And if you'd just like to have a conversation and know more, please email me or reach out to me any way you'd like. I would love to connect. And if there's any questions, I'd love to address them. Thank you very much.